Hello again, fishy friends. Everyone enjoys a fish tank that has a very nice arrangement. As fish keepers, we tend to use various decorations in our tanks to give it the look that would satisfy our eyes every time we look at it. One of the most favorite decors to add is a piece of wood, or commonly called driftwood, that adds a more natural look to the fish tank. After picking up the driftwood that you want to see inside your fish tank, either from a local fish store or a nearby lake or river, care must be done in order for it to be fish friendly. There are a few steps that fish keepers follow in preparing their driftwood, from the removal of debris to the curing stage. But what about preparing driftwood that is too large? So in this video, I will show you how I added a big piece of wood in my main tank. The piece that I'm going to use is a little more than 6 feet in length, about 18 inches in width, and some of its branches are about 16 to 18 inches in height. By the way, in some parts of the video, you may see me use different sizes of driftwood since I have already prepared this monster before I made the video. And most of the steps I took were the same as how you should prepare your driftwood. Now, let us talk about the different steps you must take in preparing your driftwood for your tank. The first thing to do is to scrub all sides of the driftwood to remove dirt and debris that are attached to it. When the piece we choose to use has been sitting in the store shelf for quite a time, or something that comes from nature, we all know that dirt like soil, for example, gets attached to it. And so, scrubbing it will greatly remove a huge amount of dirt, plus it also allows the removal of sap that is falling off from the wood if there's any. And, a little reminder, never use soap or chemicals while scrubbing your driftwood because the residue from these cleaning materials may get sipped by the wood, which will surely cause problems to your fish once the wood is already submerged in your fish tank. So after scrubbing the wood, I am immediately going to spray it with water. Using a power hose, I will give this piece of wood a good bath in all of its sides. I am doing this process to remove more dirt from it, especially the ones that are powder-like and more likely not visible. Now, if a power hose isn't available, an ordinary garden hose would be fine. Just make sure that you rinse or wash all sides of your driftwood. Then, I am going to let this piece dry out before I proceed to the next process. I usually leave the piece outside to let it sun dry. The drying process may differ depending on the season. On hot days, the piece of driftwood dries up faster than it would during cold or rainy days. Also, having the piece dry out makes it easier for you to do the next process. The next step is rather optional in my opinion. Now that the driftwood is dry, you can then proceed to sanding. Using a sandpaper, flatten sharp edges of the wood that may cause injuries to your fish once it is already in your fish tank. Since I like how this piece looks like, I am going to skip the sanding process, and besides, this driftwood does not have a lot of sharp edges. Next is to wash the wood again to remove the dirt which came from sanding and the dirt that may have attached to the wood during the process of sun drying. Now, if you do not plan of sanding your driftwood, then there is no need to sun dry it as well. Instead, immediately proceed to the next process. After washing the piece of wood for a second time, we arrive at one of the most important steps in preparing driftwood for aquarium use. It is to boil the piece we choose to use in the tank. Now, for video purposes again, I will use a small piece of wood just to show you guys how it's done. So using a pot that fits your driftwood, boil it for about an hour. You might need to change the position of the wood in between the process to ensure that all sides of the driftwood is boiled. Boiling is a process wherein a hobbyist aims to remove not just dirt, but other elements that might have been stuck inside your driftwood. In some cases, there are even insects or ants inside it. Also, boiling your wood lets it leach out tannins faster. While some hobbyists do not mind tannins released by their wood, in fact, some of us even enjoy it because it gives the tank a more natural look, many still prefer to see crystal clear water in their fish tanks. Another advantage of boiling your wood is it removes the air pockets, which makes it difficult for water to penetrate some of the inner parts of it, thus making it longer for your driftwood to submerge. But what about driftwood that is too big to fit in a pot? Just like what I plan to use for my new setup, there is no way I can make this fit into a pot. So what I'm going to do is to replace the boiling process and instead pour hot water in all sides of it. This, I believe, will still help in removing unwanted elements that are inside my wood, although you might have to repeat the process several times. In my case, I will pour it with hot water 4 times. So the last process is also one of the most important steps, known as curing or soaking stage. This is the time when you submerge your driftwood in a container full of water. Any container is fine as long as it submerges the entire wood and was not used with soap or chemicals. You may also need to use pieces of rocks that are heavy enough to weigh your wood down and to prevent it from floating. The curing or soaking process, by the way, is done in order to make your wood waterlogged, or in other words, water getting into the inside of the wood, so when it is time to use it in your tank, it would sit in the place where you intend to put it. This process also lets tannins leach out from the driftwood, especially when boiling process was skipped due to the size of your piece. Also, keep in mind that different types of wood take different times of curing or soaking. Other wood types get waterlogged faster, so the soaking would be shorter. So for me, the period as to how long we should cure our driftwood is very subjective. Anyway, again, what about big pieces of driftwood? How would I cure them? If you do not have a big enough container that can accommodate your wood, then you might have to take a different option. This is actually what I'm going to do right now. Since I do not have a big container that can fit my 6 feet driftwood, I do not have an option but to put it directly in my tank. Won't it float if I do that? Most of the time, driftwood will float and definitely an eyesore to the owner and might also make fish feel uncomfortable. So what I'm going to do is, I will force the wood in the place where I want it to be and weigh it down with a couple of rocks. Now, I know this is risky because the rocks might fall into the bottom of my tank should the wood move or should the rocks accidentally get hit by my fish, which might cause the bottom glass to break. So to somewhat avoid it, I am going to place rocks on the parts of the wood that is closest to the bottom of my tank. I also placed rocks in the thinnest but strong enough parts of the wood to anchor it down. Alternatively, you may glue pieces of rocks to your driftwood so you won't have to worry about rocks getting displaced. That again might cause your tank glass to break. So there you have it, guys, my methods of preparing a large piece of driftwood for fish tank use. I hope that you found the video informative and were able to pick some ideas on how you should prepare your driftwood as the centerpiece of your tank. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video and use the comment section for questions, suggestions, and feedback. Also, please do not forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell because there are more informative fishy videos to come. Happy fish keeping, everyone!